On my wedding day, as everyone waited for the bride to make her entrance, I had no idea I was about to experience the greatest scandal of my life. Surrounded by flowers, music, and smiling guests, I discovered a betrayal that would turn that sacred altar into a stage for revenge. Minutes before the ceremony, hidden behind a door, I heard my fiancée confessing to her best friend that she was still in love with her ex. The words pierced my chest like knives. If he asked me to come back right now, I'd leave everything. The woman I was about to call my wife had been deceiving me from the very beginning. My first instinct was to run, to disappear before facing the greatest humiliation of my life. But the more I thought about the charade she had orchestrated, the more something inside me began to burn. I would not be the silent victim of this betrayal. I would turn this wedding into a spectacle of the truth. While she got ready, believing she could fool everyone, I planned my revenge. I called the sound technician, discreetly asking him to change the order of the files for the projection screen. I typed a few sentences into my phone and took a deep breath. If my life was going to fall apart, at least it would go down in style. When silence fell over the church and everyone awaited my vows, I took the microphone. The guests expected words of love, but instead, they heard the bride's secret messages read aloud. The shock was immediate, and that was only the beginning of the expose. Growing up, I never imagined that my worst nightmare would happen on the day I was supposed to be the happiest man in the world. I had always dreamed of building a family, marrying the woman I loved, and starting a real life. I met my fiancée 3 years before the wedding. She seemed perfect, charismatic, sweet, intelligent, the kind of person who lights up a room the moment she enters. I fell in love too quickly, and perhaps that was my first mistake. Our friends called us the model couple. Everything seemed ideal. She planned every detail of the ceremony with a sparkle in her eye, and I believed our love was solid. I never suspected that, behind the scenes, she was carrying on secret conversations with her ex-boyfriend. What I discovered minutes before the wedding forever changed my understanding of trust. The woman who was supposed to be my wife, the person who promised to love me forever, confessed that she had never gotten over her old flame. I could have just canceled everything, but I couldn't accept the idea of walking away as the naive fool. The pain of betrayal transformed into a dangerous fuel, revenge. And that's when I decided that no one would ever forget this day. Quick question for you all. Comment with the city and country you're watching from. I want to see just how far the shockwaves of this bomb will travel. And you might want to subscribe to the channel because the twists that come next are even heavier than you can imagine. At the beginning of our relationship, I saw nothing wrong. To me, she was too perfect to be questioned. But looking back now, I realize the signs were all there, flashing like warning lights I chose to ignore. She was always glued to her phone, claiming it was just work chats or messages from her mom. I believed her. I didn't want to be the jealous fiancé who snoops through everything. But sometimes she would smile at the screen in a strange way, as if she were in another world. One night, as we were lying in bed, I heard her phone vibrate. She got up quickly, went into the living room, and came back minutes later. When I asked, she simply replied, "It was just my friend needing to vent." I believed her. because I trusted her blindly. Another time, she disappeared for hours, saying she was helping a cousin. When I called, the connection kept dropping. She later told me the signal was bad. But a week later, I found out that this cousin didn't even live in the city anymore. Even my closest friends made suspicious comments. One of them told me, "Man, sometimes she seems distant, like her head is somewhere else." I just laughed it off. I never wanted to believe that the love of my life could be deceiving me. These memories came back like daggers on my wedding day, and I asked myself, how could I have been so blind for so long? But none of it compared to what I heard just minutes before walking to the altar. The words that destroyed my faith in everything we had built together. A few minutes before the ceremony, I stepped out the side door of the church to get some air. My heart was pounding, and I needed a moment to compose myself before walking to the altar. In the silence of the hallway, I heard voices coming from a private room set aside for the bride. The door was slightly ajar. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but as I passed, I heard my name. Instinctively, I stopped. I recognized her voice immediately. She wasn't rehearsing her vows or expressing nerves. It was a suffocating confession. With a choked voice, she told her best friend, "I still love him. If my ex showed up right now, I'd leave everything. This wedding is just what's left, but I need to project this perfect image for everyone." My legs began to tremble. The woman I believed was the love of my life had never truly chosen me. I was just the facade, the safe plan to show the world, the centerpiece in a life built on lies. Each word felt like a blade twisting in my chest, and I could barely breathe. I thought about running, about disappearing before everyone saw me as the fool who'd been played. But instead, an icy rage took hold of me. I would not let this betrayal pass in silence. If she wanted a show, I would turn our wedding into the final scene of her farce. In that instant, the idea of revenge was born. In a few minutes, the altar would no longer be a stage for our union, but a stage for the truth. I returned to the sacristy feeling as if I'd been punched in the gut. My heart was still hammering, her words echoing in my head. I still love him. This wedding is just a facade. I knew I couldn't carry this alone. I called my two closest groomsmen, my older brother and my best friend. They entered the room, concerned by my pale face, and I broke down. I told them, word for word, what I had just overheard. My brother's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you sure that's what you heard?" I just nodded, my throat dry. My best friend, however, wasted no time. "Dude, if we don't have proof, no one will believe you. They'll think you just lost your mind before the wedding." That's when the idea struck. We needed her phone. I was almost certain I'd find the conversations with her ex. That would be the key to exposing her in front of everyone. The problem was, how could we get it amidst the chaos of the preparations? My brother took a deep breath. She probably left it charging in the prep room. Brides are always focused on the dress, makeup, hair. The phone gets left lying around. He was right. I just needed the courage to act. My best friend stepped up. "Leave it to me. I'll go in like I'm bringing her water or asking about the makeup artist. If the phone's there, I'll grab it." I agreed, though I was trembling inside. It was risky. but it was my only chance to turn my pain into vengeance. Minutes later, he returned. In his hands was her phone. My brother had already opened the laptop he was using for the party's playlist, ready to sync anything. With trembling hands, I started searching through her messages. It didn't take long to find recent texts filled with, "I miss you. This wedding means nothing. If I could, I'd run back to you." With every line I read, my anger grew, and so did my determination. "This is it," I said, holding up the phone like a weapon. "This is the proof. And today, in front of everyone, she's going to get a taste of her own medicine." With the messages in hand, the plan was set. The altar wouldn't be a stage for love. It would be the stage for the greatest expose of her life. The music began to play, a soft melody filling every corner of the church. The guests rose with smiles, phones in hand, ready to capture what they believed was the beginning of a beautiful love story. Standing at the altar, my legs felt like lead. My brother and my best friend, accomplices in what was about to unfold, stood firmly by my side. They knew this was no longer a wedding. It was the prelude to a scandal, and yet they didn't back down. The main doors opened. There she was, stunning in her white dress, radiant under the emotional gazes of her family. To everyone there, she was the perfect bride. To me, she was a fraud, someone who, just moments before, had confessed her love for another man. Every step she took down the aisle felt like a cut in my chest. I watched her smile, wave discreetly, and act out a happiness that never existed. And ironically, no one noticed. Only I knew the truth I held in my hands. When she reached the altar, our eyes met. She smiled, and for a second, I almost gave in, almost let myself be fooled again. But then I remembered the messages on the phone, the damned words I heard from behind that door, and the rage returned like a punch. The priest began the ceremony. His solemn voice echoed off the walls, but to me, it was just distant noise. I was counting the seconds, waiting for the vows, the moment when, in front of everyone, she expected to hear a declaration of love. Little did she know, she would instead hear her own betrayal broadcast over the microphone. And it was exactly when they handed me that microphone, expecting my vows, that I decided to reveal everything. The priest handed me the microphone, and all eyes turned to me. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the vows. The bride smiled, anticipating sweet words. Guests adjusted their phone cameras. A hush fell over the church. I took a deep breath, swallowed hard, and began. Today is an unforgettable day, a day when the truth must be spoken before everyone. I saw my bride's smile widen, believing I was referring to our love. She had no idea the weight those words carried. I continued, measuring each phrase. Everyone here came to witness a union, a promise of loyalty and fidelity, but also of sincerity, because a marriage without truth is nothing more than a beautiful piece of theater. The guests nodded, moved. Some were even wiping away tears. I looked directly into her eyes. Her smile faltered for a second, perhaps at the intensity in my voice. And I don't want to hide anything from anyone. I don't want to deceive those who came here today, full of faith in this moment. Today, everyone deserves to know the real story. A murmur rippled through the pews. The bride tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. My groomsmen, standing firm, knew what was about to happen. They had already prepared everything. So, before I declare my love, I want to share some words that are not my own. They are words spoken by the person who should be here with me out of love, but who, in truth, never stopped belonging to another man. The air grew heavy. The bride's eyes widened. The guests exchanged confused glances. And in that instant, I unlocked the phone and swiped to the first message. With the microphone in hand, in the church in absolute silence, I began to read, word for word, the confession she never imagined would echo in public. With the phone in my hand, my voice boomed through the microphone. I'm going to read some messages exchanged by my bride, the woman everyone believed to be faithful and in love. The color drained from her face. She tried to whisper, "Don't do this," but it was too late. I opened the first conversation and read aloud. I'm getting married, but it's not for love. It's because he gives me stability. With him, I'll never have to worry about money. A gasp swept through the church. I glanced at her parents, who lowered their heads in shame. I continued without mercy. I feel nothing when I'm with him, but I have to keep up appearances. Everyone thinks we're the perfect couple. It's convenient. Some guests covered their mouths, shocked. I saw my mother wiping away tears, my father clenching his fists. Want more? I asked, holding the phone high. The silence was deafening. So I read another message. If my ex wanted me back, I'd drop everything in a heartbeat, but since he didn't come back, I'll go through with this wedding. At least I'll have a husband who won't abandon me. The bride tried to snatch the phone from my hand, but my brother stepped between us. Not now, he said in a firm voice. She recoiled in panic. The whispers turned into a loud murmur. People were standing up, looking at each other in disbelief. I knew this was just the beginning. I took a deep breath and said, "If there's anyone left who thinks I'm exaggerating, prepare yourselves, because what I'm about to show you leaves no doubt about who the woman I was about to marry really is." I gave a signal to my best friend, and in seconds, the large screen behind the altar changed. Instead of the romantic photos everyone expected, screenshots of her messages appeared. Messages she never imagined anyone would have the courage to expose. The first was with her ex. There she was, telling him she had never been able to forget him, that he was still the love of her life. And right below it, his reply, asking why, then, she was marrying me. Her answer felt like another knife in my chest. She said she needed stability, that I was stupid enough to believe every word she faked. An uncomfortable silence fell over the church. People stared, stunned, some with their hands over their mouths. The screen changed again. Now, it was a conversation with one of her bridesmaids. My fiancée was saying she felt absolutely nothing for me, but that the wedding would be perfect, that she would walk out of there like a queen. And her friend, the very same bridesmaid standing at the altar in her fine dress, was right there in the messages, encouraging the whole charade. She had said no one would ever find out. Now, the reproachful gaze of every guest turned upon her, and she froze in shame. And then came the cruelest blow. Another text exchange with her ex was displayed. He had asked, "What if I come back?" And she had replied that she would leave everything behind, that this wedding was nothing but a facade, that her heart beat only for him. The guests began to murmur loudly, indignant. Some stood up, saying they couldn't believe what they were seeing. But the worst was yet to come. The screen displayed screenshots from a WhatsApp group with two of her bridesmaids. My fiancée was saying that marrying me was a guarantee, that she would never want for anything by my side. Her friends laughed, telling her to put on a good act at the altar, adding that I would pay all the bills while she had fun with the one she truly loved. The church erupted in murmurs. Some people shook their heads in disapproval. Others got up to leave. The bridesmaids were pointed at, judged before everyone. It was at that moment that the bride's father stood up, his face red with rage, his voice thick with a pain that was ready to unleash something no one expected to hear. In a loud, clear voice, the bride's father said, "I can't stay silent any longer. This isn't the first time I've seen my daughter destroy a good man for the sake of that lowlife she insists on calling love. There was another one, a decent, hard-working young man who truly valued her, and she threw it all away to chase after this good-for-nothing who never respected her, who always treated her like she was disposable." The crowd held its breath. The bride's eyes widened, shocked by her own exposure. Her father continued, each word landing like a hammer blow. "This man only comes to you for his own amusement. He never had the courage to commit to anything. But still, you insist on crawling back to him while men of value are cast aside. I never imagined I would have to say this, but I feel ashamed to be your father today. This is not what your mother and I taught you. These are not the values we passed on to you." Her mother began to cry, hiding her face in her hands. The bridesmaids lowered their heads, unable to face anyone. The guests were paralyzed, as if struck by the weight of his words. Standing at the altar, I felt a mixture of pain and relief, because for the first time, I wasn't the only one exposing this sham. The truth was now coming from her own family. The bride fell to her knees, begging for mercy. But I knew. The mask had fallen, and there was no going back. I didn't want to hear anything more, not the bride's sobs, not the indignant whispers of the guests. I felt the air in the church suffocating me, as if the walls were closing in. I held the microphone for a moment, took a deep breath, and looked at the priest. My voice came out firm, but heavy with bitterness. "I'm sorry, Father, for wasting your time here today. But don't feel bad. I wasted my time too. I wasted years of my life believing in a lie." The church fell silent. My fiancée, still on her knees, tried to grab the hem of my jacket, but I stepped away. I saw the desperation in her eyes, a silent plea, but there was no room left for pity. I handed the microphone back to the priest and straightened my jacket. My brother stood beside me, ready to leave with me. My best friend did the same on my other side. I was not alone. "This wedding is over before it even began," I added, turning my back. The sound of murmurs exploded behind me, but I was already walking towards the exit. The bride was crying loudly, screaming my name, trying to run after me. The bridesmaids tried to hold her back, but she struggled. The scene no longer belonged to me. I was no longer part of that play. But before I could cross the threshold of the church, I heard her desperate voice. "Please, give me a chance to explain. It's not what you think." I stopped for a second, but I didn't turn around. She ran to me, her makeup-streaked eyes wild, her trembling hands trying to grab my arm. Yes, I said horrible things. I sent messages I shouldn't have. but it was a moment of weakness. You know I was confused. The guests watched in absolute silence. Some shook their heads, others whispered indignantly. I remained motionless, letting her speak only so that everyone could hear. I don't love him anymore, she insisted, her voice choked with emotion. It was just nostalgia, a longing for a past I hadn't properly moved on from. But you're the one here now. I chose you. That should be enough. Rage burned inside me. She still had the audacity to call that a choice. But she didn't stop. She grabbed my jacket and almost shouted, "Don't you understand? I needed to feel secure. He never gave me that, but you did. I knew that with you, I would have stability, a decent life. That's why I agreed to marry you. I just wanted a guarantee." A collective gasp went through the guests. Her words echoed like knives. It wasn't remorse. It was just a confession that she was using me as a shield, a resource, a plan B. I looked at her, still clinging to my jacket, and felt nothing but disgust. My voice came out firm and clear, so that everyone in the church could hear. You just confessed, in front of everyone, that you never loved me, that you only wanted someone to finance your charade. And you know what's worse? You don't even realize how low you've stooped. She was crying, babbling nonsense, trying to convince me. But I continued, mercilessly. You talk about security, about stability, but you never knew what real love was. Love isn't using someone as a shield. Love isn't crawling after a man who only wanted you for fun, who never had the courage to claim you. Love is not turning your life into a stage play and expecting everyone to applaud. The bride fell to her knees, sobbing, pleading, "Please, don't leave me. I can change. I swear I can be the woman you deserve." I leaned down slightly, just enough for our foreheads to almost touch. And I spoke softly, but each word cut through the air like a blade. You had years to be that woman. You chose to be a coward. And today, finally, your mask has fallen. I stepped back slowly, straightened my jacket, and without a backward glance, I added, I didn't lose a wife today. I escaped a fraud. The silence in the church was broken by a collective murmur, a mixture of shock and approval. I knew that from that moment on, there was nothing left to tie me to that sham of a marriage. I walked towards the door, and behind me, all that remained was the sound of her sobs, echoing from an altar that would never be consecrated. As soon as I walked out of the church, the cool air hit my face, as if I could finally breathe after years of being suffocated by a lie. Behind me, chaos was spreading, guests arguing, bridesmaids crying, and the bride herself collapsing in tears at the altar. A few friends came to hug me outside, telling me I had done the right thing. Others just shook their heads, still in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. The story was already on everyone's lips, and I knew that within hours it would be all over social media and the town's group chats. That night, I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, which is why, when my phone vibrated in the middle of the night, I wasn't surprised to see dozens of messages from her. First came the pleas. "Forgive me. I was confused." Then came the justifications. "I just wanted security. I was afraid of the future." And finally, the veiled threats. "You will regret leaving me like this." In the days that followed, she tried to find me. She came to my house crying, saying she could change, that we could start over. She even went to my mother, begging for a chance, as if she could manipulate my family the same way she had tried to manipulate me. But there was no room for that anymore. Each attempt she made only made it clearer what I already knew. There was no love at all, only self-interest, cowardice, and a sick dependency that made her humiliate herself for someone who never respected her. And me, looking at all of this from the outside now, I could only think about how blind I had been for so long. Today, looking back, I don't feel proud of what happened, but I do feel relief. Relief that I saw the truth before I signed my own sentence of unhappiness. I didn't lose a wife. I escaped a lie. I won't say I came out unscathed. I was naive. I lost years believing in someone who never saw me as a man, only as security, as a guarantee. That hurts. But I learned that the worst prison is insisting on holding the hand of someone who let you go a long time ago. I'm not telling this story, expecting applause, or to pose as a hero. I'm telling it because I know I'm not the only one. Maybe you, who are listening, have felt that same emptiness, that same feeling of being used, deceived, made a fool of. And if that's the case, I hope my story serves just one purpose: to show that there is life after the lie. Because in the end, dignity is non-negotiable. True love doesn't need forced proofs, and certainly not masks. And if the mask falls, be thankful it fell before you reached the altar. Look, I don't know about you, but to me, this bride showed the worst kind of betrayal. Not just emotional infidelity, but blatant manipulation. Using someone as a plan B while chasing an ex who only humiliated her. That's more than a lack of character. It's cowardice. And I'll say it, the complicit bridesmaids who knew about the filth are almost as rotten as she is. Anyone who covers up for a cheater is a cheater too. Now, I want to know your opinion. Did the groom do the right thing by exposing everything at the altar? Or should he have simply canceled the wedding quietly? Would you have the courage to expose a betrayal like that in front of everyone? Have you ever been through something similar? Leave a comment below. We really want to hear from you and what you think about it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to become part of our big family and not miss the next stories. Every week, there's a new story that might just open the eyes of someone who needs it. See you next time.